Hey, my name is Pete Hovanek. Welcome to the annual Warbirds over Monroe Air Show for the city of Monroe. We're here at the beautiful Charlotte Monroe Executive Airport. We've got Tinkerbell behind me, one of our vintage aircraft at the show. We put this piece together to give you a glimpse of what we do each year here at the Charlotte Monroe Executive Airport. We've got vintage aircraft that have so much historical significance. We've got entertainment. We've got something for the whole family. This weekend, we have about 40 different aircraft here doing all kinds of amazing things in the air, on the ground. You name it, we have it here. We've got reenactors, more than 150 reenactors showing you what it was like in the 40s, 50s, and beyond, and just an amazing piece of aerobatic and aviation history here in Monroe.
He was a famous trumpet man from round Chicago way. He had a boogie style that no one else could play. He was a top man at his craft. But then his number came up and he was gone with the draft. He's in the army now, he's blowing reveille. He's the boogie woogie bugle boy in Company B. He made him blow a bugle for his Uncle Sam. It really brought him down because he could not jam. The captain seemed to understand, because the next day the cap went out and drafted a band.
Hey, we're going to kick things off by hearing from Craig with the National Warplane Museum, and he's going to talk about Whiskey 7, a C-47 that was one of the lead aircraft in the 1944 D-Day invasion. This piece of machinery came all the way down from Geneseo, New York. First time we've had one out here, going to give us a real treat. It's going to drop some paratroopers during the show. Lots of history, as you can imagine, being a lead aircraft from D-Day. Lots of history, lots of stories. These planes were so instrumental in World War II and beyond, and we're just fortunate to have these guys down here and hope you enjoy it.
My name is Craig Wadsworth. I'm from the National Warplane Museum in Geneseo, New York. Down here at the Monroe Air Show, standing in front of our flagship. Her name is Whiskey 7. She was a 1943 model C-47A model used in the invasion of Normandy and the other aerial assaults during the Second World War in Europe. We've come down to the air show this weekend from Geneseo, New York with our volunteer crew to be out here, be a display for the public, and take part in the air show. Whiskey 7 was the lead ship on the second wave of the 82nd Airborne over Somme-Mériglace in Normandy. That was on the morning of June the 6th, 1944. She dropped 19 members of the 505th Parachute Infantry Regiment, and they were dropped in the drop zone near the first town that was liberated by the Allied armies that day. She left the Army Air Corps in 1947, became an airliner down here in the southeast United States, did that for a number of years, also was a freight hauling airplane around the US and also in Canada before she came to the National Warplane Museum in 2006. While we were researching the records, we discovered what she'd done during the Second World War, and that's why we've restored her back to her D-Day configuration. The paint job that you see is what she carried in 1944. Those are the famous invasion stripes for the Normandy invasion. During the Allied invasion of Sicily in 1943, 25 Allied aircraft were shot down by friendly fire. These stripes were added the day before the Normandy invasion as a way that ground personnel could absolutely identify all aircraft, and the rule was if they didn't have this stripe, they were fair game. So the 3 stripes on each wing and the stripes on the tail were very important to get those painted on and painted on right. The C-47s were considered non-combat aircraft. They had no self-sealing fuel tanks, no armor plate, no defensive armament. So when they were flying over places like Normandy at 500 feet over the ground, they were being shot at with absolutely no protection on board for the crews or the aircraft. In fact, the pilots were given flak vests that they took off and sat on, because the shots coming from the ground would be more likely to hit them in a very tender place. So they would sit on their flak vests, and the paratroopers on board the airplanes would sit on their helmets for the same reason. And then right before they get out, they would suit up and get ready to go. The airplane carries 800 gallons of fuel. That gives us about 10.5 hours of range. In airplanes, we talk about time, not distance, because of the winds in the air can change how far we can go, but the time remains the same. The engines are 1,200 horsepower apiece. They're built by Pratt & Whitney out of Groton, Connecticut. They are 1,830 cubic inches each. They burn about 50 gallons of gasoline per hour, and they carry 29 gallons of oil each. It's actually a very nice airplane to fly. It's very stable on the controls. It's a great platform. It really isn't any trouble at all. We can fly formation with it. We can do parachute drops. We do everything with it. This airplane was the workhorse of the Second World War. Winston Churchill credited 4 things that absolutely guaranteed the Allies would win. The Jeep, the Willys Jeep, the M1 carbine rifle, penicillin, and the C-47 aircraft. It was all over the world. It flew the China-Burma-India hump. It flew all over the world, every service, every ally, and it's just got such an amazing history.
Hello, my name's Angie Glotzback.
And my name's Wanda Martin.
And I'm Jeanette Kays. We're the Ladies for Liberty, and we're so happy to be in Monroe for this fabulous air show.
We're here because we want to celebrate World War II veterans and all the wonderful aircraft that's represented here. That's what we do, and we love being here. This is the main event for this air show, and it's just amazing the people that have come out today just to see these wonderful Warbirds. So we're happy to be here.
Our group was here 6 years ago.
Yes, it was our very first air show 6 years ago, and we're so happy to be back. And here comes a loud plane.
So getting back to the planes, we've got Jerry Connolly coming up next with the de Havilland Vampire. Now, interesting piece of machinery. It is the first single-engine jet fighter plane made, built in Britain in 1943. Jerry is a veteran of the air show circuit, but more famously known for flying in Red Star and Dragon. This is his first year flying the Vampire, and very unique aircraft, has a very distinct body shape, does some great aerobatics, makes some different sounds as it's flying, so it's going to be a treat for people to see, and we're just very glad to have Jerry here and look forward to hearing and seeing the sights and feeling the energy that his aircraft produces.
My name is Jerry Connolly. I'm former United States Air Force, and this aircraft behind me is a de Havilland Vampire. I love flying this jet because it is truly historical in every respect. Everything that you see the military flying today, this is the great-grandfather. This is the world's first single-engine jet fighter. It was the first jet fighter to make it to 50,000 feet, to cross the Atlantic, and to land on a moving aircraft carrier. So before anything else that we see is flying, this was the grandfather of it all. The de Havilland Vampire was designed in 1943 by the de Havilland aircraft that built the Mosquito fighter bomber during World War II. And the cool thing about it was the entire fuselage is made out of wood. So it was a very unique technology, and they realized during World War II, if you have a very thick wood and you shoot a 50 caliber machine gun bullet into it, it'll actually stick into it like a 22 into a phone book. Versus the more modern fighters, you shoot a 50 cal into the side, go right through the airplane. So it was the very first composite aircraft that was ever designed and built as far as jets go. The airplane itself had a very advanced engine for the time, so the Brits wouldn't fly it during World War II because they were afraid if one got shot down, the Nazis would be able to extend the war. So it came into frontline service in 1945, a month after the war ended, and flew in 29 countries. There was over 3,000 of them built, and you're seeing one of the only 3 remaining aircraft in the United States. The aircraft I used to fly was the de Havilland Venom, which is the big brother to this. It was a single-seat fighter, looked exactly like it as far as configuration, but could fly Mach 0.95. It was seriously the fastest jet fighter of the 50s. So when I saw this one that was available, I had flown a sister ship to it 15 years ago at a guy's airport to get ready to fly the Venom. This was the 2-seat advanced trainer for it. So the one behind me, though, is actually the fighter bomber version. The configuration of the airplane is very unique. First of all, everybody always asks me, why two tails? Well, the engine at the time was so big that the only way you could really find a way to exhaust the jet thrust was to be able to put it in between the 2 tails. So it was by purpose design they did this. The aircraft itself is a pilot's dream to fly. I like to say it's the last beautiful airplane that was ever built, because if you look at the sweeping lines on it, the way that the tails sweep, and the actual configuration of the airplane, it's just an absolutely gorgeous airplane to fly. And it flies like it looks. It's fast and it's very maneuverable. We can do upwards of 540 miles per hour in the aircraft and do a 6G pull in it. The way the show season works is I actually take the airplane and I go to the first show, and then I hop it from show to show. It hasn't been home in a year. Well, 15 shows is a lot of shows to fly with an airplane. People think that when you go do an air show, you just pop in for the weekend, do a couple days and go home. But there's the transit time to get there. Usually I leave on a Tuesday, arrive at a show on a Thursday, then we do all of our flight prep and stuff on Friday, and then fly Saturday and Sunday, and then off to the next show, leaving on Monday. So it usually ends up being like 30 weeks on the road. Well, actually, our museum up in Detroit has about 25 different jet fighters, and I'm the primary pilot for air shows for all those jets. We do have a Venom, like I used to fly, and then we have the 2 Vampires that we're flying here, and they also have one that's called a Super Pinto. And the Super Pinto was last flown by the most famous air show pilot of all, a guy named Bob Hoover, about 25 years ago. And I will be flying that airplane on the show circuit this coming year as well. It's kind of funny because a lot of the guys that are flying more modern jets would much rather be flying this than what they're flying, because like I said, it's a little anticlimactic to get in a jet, which is everything is very modern and computerized and everything else, and then you jump in this, and outside of turning an old hand crank, you know, everything is
All right, we've got something a little different for you here. Getting away from the Warbirds, we've got some Pitts bi-wing aircraft. Man, these things are so cool. You get to see these planes do loops, do flips, do drops, hammerheads, double hammerheads. And I've been in there and I've done it with them. So you guys on the ground are going to get to see something really cool. You're going to hear from two of the coolest guys, the most low-key guys, Keith Davis and Clemens Cooley. Keith and Clemens, two totally different guys, and one with an engineering, one with an arts background, but they come together to give you a show and give you an experience that truly takes your breath away. These guys do things that really shouldn't be done in a plane, and it's amazing to see from the ground, from the air, and it's just an awesome sight. So we're so happy to have these guys. They've been here for several years, and we're going to keep having these guys back because they're just great guys and they provide great entertainment. So we love these guys, and I hope you enjoy hearing more about them.
My name is Keith Davis. I fly a Pitts S2B. This is actually a factory certified airplane. It's built in a factory in Wyoming. This airplane started back in the 40s from Curtis Pitts, was the guy that designed it. Flew the first one, had a little tiny engine, flat bottom wings. It was nice and slow and docile. And then they started putting bigger and bigger engines in them. And they sold these as kits. They sold them as just the plans. The plans got round on the top and on the bottom so they could fly upside down, just like right side up. And it got to the point where people would build these things and they'd crash them on the first flight because they didn't know how to land the things because they were going so fast when they touched down. So they came up with the two-seat Pitts. And the two-seat Pitts first flew in the early 70s. They made them as certified airplanes so you can actually give flight instruction in the airplane. So it's an advanced aerobatic trainer.
My name is Clemens Cooley. The name of my air show is Chef Pitts Air Shows, and I fly this Pitts S1S. I built the airplane in my garage. I bought a couple of pieces and parts from my aerobatic instructor, and over a 3-year period, finished the airplane, literally in my garage.
They're still in production, and the wing is made out of wood. They're covered in fabric. It's just a really great airplane, and what I like to do in my air show is show what you can do with a trainer. I bring it right down to the ground, right in front of the crowd, and I come up and I can do tumbles in this airplane. The propeller is actually another control surface if you know how to use it. So you can get some extra turns somersaults that you can't get otherwise. The control surfaces just won't do it. And you can also get the airplane in a situation where it's no longer flying, and then you're actually tumbling. And you're tumbling around that big rotating gyroscope, the propeller.
I went to my first air show at 7 or 8, and it took me a long time to get to this point where I can fly air shows in my own airplane. That's why that's on there, chasing the dream. You know, if you just keep working towards it in some way, and it can be in small ways, you know, just trying to get a good enough job even to be able to fund something, or meeting or getting lucky sometimes and meeting the right people at the right time. The guy that I flew my aerobatics with in the pits, you know, just super lucky just to meet the guy. I just happened to have a job nearby and he was there. But the idea being is that you just keep working towards it and you can do it, whatever it is, whether it's air shows or racing a car or anything really. You know, you just keep working towards it and you know you can do it.
Keith and Clemens did a great job showing off their pits, showing a little bit of their aerobatics. Great planes. We've got another awesome piece of machinery coming up, the TBM Avenger from the Capitol Wing of the Commemorative Air Force. These guys came down from Maryland. We've been trying for years to get one of these aircraft down here, and we actually had two. We had the one from the CAF, and we had one from the Mid-Atlantic Air Museum in Reading, Pennsylvania. Two great aircraft, built in 1943, three-man crew, tons of armament, tons of weaponry, just a true workhorse. So we're just happy to have these guys down here and hope you enjoy.
Hi, I'm Bill Douglas. I'm with the Capitol Wing of the Commemorative Air Force. The Commemorative Air Force is a national 501c3 charity that restores, maintains, and flies World War II aircraft. Each unit supports some of those 170 aircraft around the country. And our unit has the aircraft behind us, the TBM-3E Avenger, which flew for both the Navy and the Marine Corps. The aircraft is formerly a Marine Corps aircraft that went through a tour with the Canadian Navy after the Marine Corps, and then the Canadian Forest Service doing firefighting. So when we got it to 2008, we had to restore it from its spray configuration back to its World War II configuration, which meant putting a bomb bay back in, putting the gun turret back in, and a whole lot of other restoration type efforts. What we now have is a fine restoration based on a Marine Corps unit that flew in World War II at the Battle of Okinawa. That was VMTB 143, and one of the unique things about that squadron, which we liked in restoring the aircraft, was, as far as we can determine, they were the only Marine Corps unit that the commander allowed them to use nose art on their aircraft. If you're a Warbird fan, you know that there's a lot of nose art in history, and we chose one of the unit's aircraft, P-87, that was named Doris May. I had a chance to talk to the actual pilot of the aircraft, who is now deceased, and he said, well, the gunner's girlfriend's name was Doris May, and that might have been how it happened. But when I talked to the gunner, he said, no, it's just a coincidence that my wife's name is Doris May. I've seen a photograph of the actual wife, and she did look something like that. Now, Doris May on the World War II airplane did not have the bikini, but to be politically correct, Doris May now has a bikini. The thing that's been most important to me in the last 20 years of doing this is the number of veterans that come, especially the greatest generation, the World War II veterans that come up to you and say, wow, I flew in that airplane. And then they start telling you stories about their wartime experience. And you end up at some points quite often with both of you having tears in your eyes about their experience. And they are always so thankful that we're doing this kind of thing to represent them.
I'm Chief Warrant Officer Frank Feldman, retired Army, Intel. We've been coming out here since the first air show, and I started the Disabled American Veterans chapter here in Monroe.
Wow, how about that TBM Avenger? What an amazing piece of machinery. The one you heard about, again, up from the Capitol Wing of the Commemorative Air Force, but we also had one here from the Mid-Atlantic Air Museum up in Reading. We've been trying for years to get one of these planes here, and we were actually blessed to have two this year. So speaking of amazing pieces of machinery, we've got the P-51D Mustang behind me, Swamp Fox, owned and flown by Robert Dixon. You'll be hearing from him. He'll tell you about the history of this aircraft, the significance of it, and what a vital role it played for the United States in World War II.
I'm R.T. Dixon, just flew in a 1944 North American P-51 Mustang. The P-51 is iconic. It was one of many fighters during World War II, but you know, for for generations, young school children know what a P-51 looks like, and hopefully they know what it sounds like, which is why we fly these things, because it has that iconic sound with the Merlin engine. The P-51 was instrumental in winning the war in England and in the Pacific against the Axis forces. It carried 6 50 caliber machine guns, 3 in each wing, and about 1,890 rounds of ammunition. And if you do the math, it's about 6 seconds of gun time. It also had 2 hard points for bombs or extra fuel, or later in the war, rockets. If you know your Revolutionary War history, there was a gentleman by the name of Francis Marion who grew up in South Carolina that fought the British. And the British never could catch him, and he would disappear into the swamp, and gave him the moniker Swamp Fox. The young man that flew this during World War II grew up in South Carolina, and actually thought it would be ironic and funny to have Swamp Fox fighting out of England, because to this day, it's my understanding the British still consider Francis Marion as a war criminal. So he named it Swamp Fox. It was also the name of the high school football team. So, yeah, this particular airframe was delivered to the 445th Fighter Squadron in Bakersfield, California in May of '45, and actually never saw combat during World War II. However, it is painted like the original Swamp Fox, which flew out of Leiston, England, during World War II by a young lieutenant by the name of Will Ford. Will Ford was a replacement pilot in the 364th Fighter Squadron, 357th Fighter Group, the same fighter group that Bud Anderson and Chuck Yeager flew in, Pete Peterson, and many, many aces of World War II. But Will was a replacement pilot, but he did his duty. He put his life on the line like everybody else, and you read his combat diary, and there are many days that things didn't go right or well for him, and he, by the grace of God, survived and came back and raised a family here in the Southeast. Well, we did it to honor those who have been called to do their duty and go off and do it. And it's sort of a team effort. And I knew Will. Will was a very wonderful human being. But as far as the war effort, he was kind of a nobody. He's not a hero that everybody sees in the coloring books or on models. And we thought it was important that somebody who wasn't an ace be honored in his effort. And so it's the whole Swamp Fox mission is to honor all those who go and do their duty. He got a ride in the aircraft in December of 2012, and he recently passed away last September. But he got to see it. He came out to the Monroe Air Show a couple times, loved it. He was looking forward to this year. The joy I get from doing air shows is sharing the airplane with the general public who wouldn't maybe normally have an opportunity to see something like this. The young kids are great. They've got all sorts of questions. The veterans that come up and either flew them or knew somebody who flew them, that's the real joy of going to the air shows.
We're here in the city of Monroe's pride and joy, the cockpit of the C-46, the Tinkerbell. As you can see, we're very spacious, very comfortable. What a cool, cool plane. Built in 1944, one of about 3,000, owned and operated by the city of Monroe with a partnership from Warriors and Warbirds. This piece of machinery was famous for flying the hump, flying from China over the Himalaya mountains to Burma and India. You're going to hear from our pilot, Alex Mello. He's going to tell you the history of this plane, how this plane flies, and just all the intricate details that make up this amazing piece of machinery.
I'm standing in front of the most beautiful asset that we feel is on the airfield here in Monroe. This is the C-46 1944 Curtiss Wright Commando. She was manufactured again in 1944. She's 72 years of age, and we proudly demonstrate this aircraft throughout cities in the United States on behalf of the city of Monroe. No one gets paid a penny to touch this aircraft. We do it all because it's give back time, it's our volunteer time. We believe it's extremely important to help energize the youth of today, and of course to bring history back to the veterans of today and let them see firsthand, again, aircraft that they may not have seen for the past 65 years. This aircraft, when it was manufactured in March and flown first in March of 1940, was the largest twin-engine airplane in the world. She was powered by the two most powerful engines manufactured at that time. Currently, she is one of only 7 C-46s flying anywhere in the world. If you'd like to board another one, you have to go to Fairbanks, Alaska in order to do that. What you see is basically what was delivered to the taxpayer when they were manufacturing the aircraft from 1940 until 1945. They produced 3,181 of these aircraft in that 5-year period of time. This aircraft, as you see outfitted, is mainly designed and outfitted for paratroopers and a light load of passengers. During the altitude, they of course, in times of war, they were using oxygen, what we call supplemental oxygen. The aircraft had different stations between the pilots, the engineer, the flight engineer, the navigator, and the radio man, in which those stations had supplemental oxygen tanks, and they used masks at those altitudes. In the pilots we've spoken to at some of the venues at air shows throughout this country, we've had the pleasure, by the way, of speaking to actual pilots who flew the C-46 during periods of World War II in the European theater, over the Indian theater, servicing the needs for General Claire Chennault's P-40 Flying Tigers into China, and also in the Pacific theater, where again it would haul a lot of ammunition and supplies to support the war effort. In consideration of how she flies, well, very much like an aircraft of today. If I turn the wheel to the left, she'll go to the left. If I turn it to the right, she goes to the right. It takes just a little bit more power, a little bit more muscle to make her go that way. But again, I must reiterate that the aircraft flies magnificently, even after 72 years of operation. For me, it's a great tribute to the men and women, first of all, who manufacture the aircraft. It's a great tribute to the men who flew the aircraft. In the theaters of operation, when you think about what this aircraft went through, there are areas here that if you look closely, you'll see some damage to the aluminum skin. People ask, well, what is that damage? We don't have logs of that damage, but it could be anything. The aircraft served in times of war. One can use their imagination and determine that perhaps that was enemy aircraft fired and came through the fuselage. So when you step into this and fly the aircraft, personally to me, it's a great experience to do that. And second, to bring it back to the veterans who actually operated this aircraft over 65 years ago.
The City of Monroe is proud to be a sponsor of the 2016 Warbirds over Monroe Air Show. We have a great commitment to aerospace and aviation, and this show and the ownership of the Tinkerbell behind us shows our commitment to that industry. We are one of the top clusters of aviation and aerospace industries in the Southeast, and this air show just reinforces that commitment to that industry. The 2016 Warbirds over Monroe Air Show would not be possible without the great support of our business and industries. This air show is such a community event. It is sponsored by the City of Monroe, but it cannot be made possible without the support of our sponsors, but also the city staff, the police, the fire, the airport staff, the finance staff. Everybody in the city has a hand in making this show go off without a hitch, and for that we are truly thankful. This event is the largest event in Union County and the region, and it's a great way for us to honor our veterans, to educate our residents, and to entertain those that come out here. We love putting on this event. We love seeing the faces of the young and old. The kids light up, the older folks bring back so many emotions, and it's just great to see those emotions in the people and have those emotions flood back and let them relive what they experienced with these aircraft. We hope you like what you saw here today. We're already planning for next year, our 10th anniversary, Veterans Day weekend. We want you, we want your family, we want everybody to come on out here and experience the thrill of aviation and all that we have to offer. Thank you and have a great day.